Oh, wait. My mic has been off.
Oh.
I've been...
I was like panicking.
No, I just realized that I did a whole intro. I did a spiel. I had a great... oh, man. You missed it. Yeah. So this is what we get for doing this live. So...
It was fucking flawless!
George in the background. George is running the chat. So, yeah. I don't know. Let me do my spiel one more time, and we'll see if this actually works. All right. Hey, everybody. We've got an up-and-coming shop. We've got Cate from Sumptuous Galaxy, who's going to be talking about what it's like to be at the beginning of this journey into dildo making. And if you've ever thought about getting into this business, this is a great time to hear about what it's like from somebody who's in that beginning stage. And my name is Derek. I am the owner, creator, and head silicone slinger here at Amavidi, where we make silicone sculptures for adults. Cate. I apologize. I totally blew that intro, and
it's all good.
So, Cate, I want to say thank you for joining me. I realize that this is kind of a new experience as you're coming into this, and so I think it's awesome that you're willing to kind of talk about what it's like to be new and what it's like to start up a studio.
Oh man, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Definitely being so new, I wasn't really expecting to be invited onto a live stream, so this is really cool already. So yeah, thanks again.
Awesome. Well, all kinds of technical issues tonight. I had my speakers going and they were not supposed to be. Okay, let's reset. Give myself a second here. Deep breath. Okay, so why did you get started in this business?
Oh man, deep question. I guess, after I got into collecting toys, I kind of got into sculpting on a whim, really. For a very long time, I was like, I can barely see in 3D. I can't, think in 3D. I can't digitally sculpt, and so I was like, and I really can't, sculpt clay. So I was just like, oh, it looks really cool. I know how to do it theoretically, but I could never actually do it. And then someone was like, hey, I want to commission some models. And I was kind of like, YOLO. And I sculpted something for them, and it was really fun. But what got to me is that I kind of felt like I just kind of like stopped halfway through the creative process. I was like, oh, I want to just take this further. Like, there are definitely some fabulous sculptures out there, and I can't speak for them. And maybe they're, satisfied with just sculpting. They're like, this is a good endpoint to my creative process. But for me, I felt like I wanted to be with something from concept stage to actually pouring. And so I guess I kind of got into this because I'm a bit of a try-hard, and I can't stop at just collecting and enjoying things. I have a running joke with my friends and family that I'm bad at having fun. Every single hobby of mine, I've either done competitively or monetized. So,
Yeah. You're speaking my language. Every hobby I've ever had has turned into a business of some sort. But you mentioned friends and family. Have they figured out what you're doing?
My siblings know, my parents don't. I think they'd disown me if they knew. And I kind of like having my student loans paid for, so they're never gonna know.
Oh, wow. But the siblings know. What about your friends? Do they have any idea?
It's a mixed bag. My work friends know. Because they're sure we eat lunch together and complain about our significant others. talk about cats and what have you, but they're professional connections at the end of the day. So my work friends don't know. My not work friends do know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mix.
And do they have any opinions?
They all think it's awesome, and if they didn't think it was awesome, I don't think they'd be my friend anymore.
Good.
I just be like, bye.
Yeah, I think that's something that, I was nervous about when I got started was, what are my friends going to think? And I didn't really worry about what my parents would think because, well, it wasn't going to faze them. So there came a point where it just became a part of who I was. And so now everybody knows. And I never have to worry about who knows what or who doesn't. So there's that point where, there's a certain amount of freedom that comes with everybody knowing what you do for a living.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever get there. I'm in academia right now. I'm going to be in, business later on. So it's just kind of like, in my field, there are a lot of really chill people and a lot of really not chill people. And unfortunately, I don't want to wind up in this scenario where somebody with no chill is in, a position to decide my career trajectory and they stumble across a video of me on YouTube talking about sex toys. It's just kind of the sad reality of having another job is that I kind of have to be a little conscious about,
Yeah.
me, I guess.
Yeah. So at this point, you're just starting out, and I think one of the questions I've got for you is, how do you deal with not knowing what to do? How do you deal with that, the unknown, as you move into this?
Do a lot of research. There are a lot of great resources out there on the internet. There's a makers Discord, which I'm in, and I'm really fortunate to have all that information at my disposal. And also, like, older, more established shops have been like really, really helpful and supportive. I've definitely like bounced questions off of them. I try not to be really annoying because I don't want to be that person who's like, spoon feed me everything I need to know, please. I feel like, in this business, you have to have a certain amount of initiative and like willingness to go read PDFs, basically. I have definitely gone and read like a lot of like SDS sheets of like different like mica things and whatnot. I was like, oh, you don't list the micron size on your page?
Right.
I'm gonna figure this out or else. So it's kind of a combination of like researching and when all else fails, running crying to someone who knows what they're doing. And I mean, definitely like, a reality is like at a certain point you just have to try things for yourself, and I've just kind of accepted that some degree of failure is going to be part of the process, because you can see a tutorial and you can have theoretical knowledge of something, but until you try it yourself and really get your hands-on experience, you don't really know what you're getting into. And so it's like I've watched like mold making tutorials and being like, oh, they make it look so easy, and then I'll go do it and I'll be like, oh my God, this mold is an abomination.
You mentioned failures and things going wrong. How do you deal with that? I mean, I know how I deal with it, and failure is just part of it for me. But what about you?
I think I'm pretty lucky in that from my day job, I kind of have like a built-in like thick skin emotional buffer against failure because I'm in sciences, and especially in biology, things will fail for no fault of your own, and it's just kind of part of the process. And so I guess I've already kind of had to do that emotional work where you have to learn to accept that failure isn't indicative of your worth as a scientist, or in the case of making dildos, a dom smith.
Right.
So I guess it's just kind of like I'm so used to failure that it doesn't faze me anymore, which probably doesn't really instill a lot of confidence in me as a maker, but it's the truth.
Well, I think, you being in science and having a background in science, you've learned that a failure is a data point. It is not anything more than that. It's a point of knowledge that you now have that you can avoid or improve upon next time. So I think that has I think you kind of touched on that a little bit, but I think just putting that out there is that failure is part of this. A couple weeks ago, I had Tibbs and Alex from Fantasy Grove on, and there was a question, and Tibbs was like, if you're going to get into this business, you've got to be prepared to have a lot of failures. And, it's a tough thing to have to deal with when it comes to, the way you see yourself and your effectiveness.
Yeah, for sure. It always stings a bit when you pull something and it's flopped. It's like, something crushed me. Not like crushed like horribly, but I just like, I was really upset about some mold flops the other day, partly because I'll be honest, I don't like making molds. I want to pour the pretty things. Mold making is like a means to an end. And so it's like seeing these glove molds that I put, hours upon hours of work, like painstakingly making them in like DS10 with like as little Thyvex as I could get away with, and they still flopped. I was like, you're kidding me. I hate this.
So how did they flop?
Air bubbles.
Yeah,
okay. Oh man. So this was one of the, might have been like the second or third design I ever did. I was ambitious and I kind of really wanted to push the limit of what you could reasonably mold make. And it prints without supports. So in theory, it should be fine. In reality, this thing is a bit of an air bubble magnet and requires a lot of TLC when mold making. So it's that. But I'm stubborn and I'm going to make this thing work. I'm nothing if not stubborn. It's like my redeeming quality.
Right. Just to let everybody know, a glove mold is a type of mold that you can create that uses it's you paint it on kind of like you're just painting a surface, and then you peel that off. And what you end up with is kind of like a glove. If you had painted silicone on your hand and you pulled it off, and that negative is what you pour your silicone into. The other option is block molds, where you create a form around your model and then pour your silicone around that. They each have their place. Some people have a preference for one over the other, but it's just a style of mold making. Now, as you have gotten to this point, have you done your first drop yet?
I haven't. I wanted to do my first drop a long time ago, but as what happens with the great many shops, life stuff got in the way. I had a huge exam for graduate school, and I'm just like not quite there yet. I have some working molds. I know I can pour things that won't give anybody like turbo yeast. So there's that.
Do you have any examples of what you've poured so far?
I do. I actually have my first ever pour with me. This is my baby. Oh. It is very special to me. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right here. Ugh. Right. My Zoom background is like, it's not a person. It doesn't deserve a place on camera. Let me put my hand behind it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So this is the first dildo I ever poured. I was gonna play it safe, but I'm like, I'm gonna pour this in like white and pastels because everybody likes pastels, and also I knew that for sure I was going to keep my first ever pour, so I wanted to pour something that like fits my aesthetic, and like I definitely love like pale colors and pastels, and basically like if it looks like the marshmallows from Lucky Charms, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm quite proud of it. I feel like it could have gone way worse for first pour.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet I love you.
Yeah, we've got
Sorry,
folks
I'm
in
like
the
reading
chat.
the chat.
That's okay. We've got Tibbs from Fantasy Grove in the chat. We've got Micron. We've got Bat. Tibbs was on a couple of weeks ago. I've got Bat booked for a couple of weeks out from now. So yeah, there's lots of folks in the chat, and if you've got questions, drop them in the chat. George will wrangle those, and we will come back around to them in a bit. So, so what goals have you established for yourself in terms of where you wanted to be versus where you are and where you want to be?
Oh man, so I said I was like I'm gonna launch in April. That was hubris. I have now learned how long things take. So I can pretty confidently say early August, assuming that all of the legal paperwork doesn't take forever and a day. I will pay extra money for it to not take forever and a day because I just hate waiting that much. But yeah, I guess my goal is to launch with kind of like a quote unquote full lineup where I have like 3 models of dildos and some extras like a grinder. I actually have the master for that one that I can show off. It is plant inspired, so it's got kind of a little like leaf and flower design here.
Yeah.
And let's see, I have a cock ring design, and then I have I'm sorry, I'm just like throwing like here, look at all this plastic I have. I also sculpted like a vaginal plug because I know there's been a lot of interest in the like collector community for more models of those. And I was like, oh, I can do that. Just kind of the nice thing about being in the pre-startup phase is that I have a little bit of freedom to like shift things around just based on the market. I'm not like locked in and committed to any sort of release schedule yet. So that's kind of the nice thing about being in this little nebulous area where I'm still making stuff. Just like, oh, I want to shoehorn one more model into my launch. I can do that. And then I'm up at 2 a.m. making molds, but
Mm-hmm.
will I have initial setup? Sorry, I like keep reading the chat.
It's okay.
I answer everything.
Yeah, that's Tibbs. He's asking, if you're going to do multiple sizes with your initial lineup.
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of the reason I'm taking so long to launch. Like I could launch and be like, here you go, just have one size, whatever size I felt like. But, part of the reason it's taking me so long is that it's really important for me to have a drop that like accommodates as many people as possible. And I know that like you can't make something for literally everyone, but I want to have something for as many people as possible in my drop. So that's why I want to launch everything with like multiple sizes, multiple firmnesses. So it's taking a while, but hopefully, it'll be a pretty nice drop because like I always feel really bad for those people online where they get all hyped up for a drop. They're like, oh my God, I can't wait for this new shop, et cetera, et cetera. And then they look and they're like, oh, there's nothing for me. And I want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So that's kind of my like philosophy there is, that
right. I
don't want to get anybody like hyped up for a new shop only to be like, oh, they really don't cater to me.
Do you want to define what a vaginal plug is?
Oh, that's a good idea. So a vaginal plug is a plug-like device that's specifically for vaginal insertion. So it doesn't have a flared base, which makes it not anal safe. Do not put this in your butt if you want to avoid a trip to the emergency room. The advantage of it not having a flared base, however, is that it leaves everything external exposed. So if you want to use a vibrator at the same time, it's a lot easier versus having to navigate around a large base. And I like chunky bases as much as the next person. But, sometimes they get in the way.
Yeah, gotcha. And did you say you had a grinder? Did you
I
have that?
do have a grinder. Yep, I can show this
Oh,
again.
that one.
So
Okay.
this is, yeah, this one. It's,
Gotcha.
I don't know. I guess I kind of just had an idea one day. I was like, oh, I'll make one that looks like flowers. I'm like girly to a fault. So if I can stick flowers on something, it's a good time.
Okay. So you've kind of talked about what your goals are going into the drop in that first initial phase. What about, a year from now or 3 years from now or 5 years from now? Have you thought that far out?
I don't really have a 5-year plan. In all honesty, 5 years from now, I'm not even sure what I'll be doing for my, you know, day job. So,
Okay.
but definitely like a year from now, I want to have a nice like steady cadence of drops. My goal is to have a drop like once a month, and I guess I just kind of want to become like a reputable shop that people can recommend to their friends. Like if somebody says, hey, my friend is just getting into fantasy dildos, I'd love it if someone was like, oh, there's this shop, Sumptuous Galaxy, you should check them out. So that's kind of what I want to be in a year. I guess I have like a sort of like shoot for the moon type goal where this is kind of like, this would be a dream come true, and it's probably like not a glamorous dream come true, but I want to get to the point where I can do wholesale.
Mm.
Just because I'm really passionate about the indie toy scene, and I really want to see it gain more recognition and be in more mainstream shops. So like the ultimate dream, which like I'm being realistic, this probably isn't gonna happen, and at least not to me. Part-time person making dildos in their guest room.
Right.
But doing wholesale for like more like mainstream retailers would really be the dream, because that would get, quite a like wider range of people exposed to like safe fantasy toys.
Mm-hmm.
And just like body safe toys in general, because a lot of stuff sold at more mainstream sex toy retailers is either really cheaply made and it'll break, or it's made of unsafe materials, or both. And that's what I really love about fantasy toys, is that they're body safe, and if you take good care of them, like in theory you could pass them down to your children. That'd be really weird, but like theoretically you could.
Yeah. Tibbs is over here stealing my questions. This was one that I was just getting ready to ask, but do you think this ever may become a full-time job for you?
Oh man, that's actually a really tough question. I like it enough that it could be, but I also really, really, really love my day job. I'm really passionate about biomedical research. I'm getting a PhD in it, and you don't get a PhD if you don't love something more than life itself.
Yeah.
So, just because I'm so invested in my other job, I don't think that this would ever become, like a full-time job. I would never do this like, I was about to say I'd never do this 40 hours a week, but I'm a little try hard, and there's a non-zero probability that there will be some weeks where I do 40 hours of normal work and then 40 hours of dildo work. I say normal as if this is abnormal. I just mean 40 hours of non-spicy work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that can definitely take over your life, especially if it goes well. The wholesale category is an interesting prospect because, as I understand it, retailers like repeatability. And so do you think that is something that you might struggle against? Or do you think that there's a way that you can create a niche for yourself that still allows you the freedom?
Yeah, so I guess the way I see it is if I had the production capacity to do wholesale, I would probably also have the capacity to have, people to whom I would delegate that to. I would, be like, here you go. Here's how to do this 2-color marble. And, there definitely has to be some like design for manufacturability with wholesale. I think that, from the sculpting stage up, you have to sculpt something that's easy to trim and easy to post process after 3D printing. And, then you have to design a pour style where you can repeat it to, within, a reasonable degree of, if you look at the stock photo and look at any given product, you can be like, yeah, this is what I ordered. So,
Right.
It's a sort of thing where it's like, if I were to go down that route, I would probably specifically design models and pour styles for that. Just to ensure that, people get what they pay for based on the stock image. Because I've been stock photoed by a certain lizard
Yeah, right.
that I shall not name further, and it was pretty disappointing. So yeah, that's definitely like a consideration to have.
Yeah, that stock photo issue is something that we want to be as consistent as we possibly can, but sometimes reality gets in the way.
Yeah.
So let's see. I had a question I wanted to get to.
Somebody else stole one of your questions.
Somebody stole one of my questions? Well, you have to let me know which one that was. Okay, so you have your website, and are you just running your website, or are you using Etsy, or what platform are you using?
I'm using Shopify, and if anybody's tried to go to my website, I apologize. It's kind of still in password mode. It's gonna go live like tonight, I promise. But yeah, I just like, again, I'm like so clinically anxious that I can't do anything without doing like a bucket load of research beforehand. So I just kind of read about like how to do your own sales and whatnot, and I just heard so much about Etsy and their fees, and I was just like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going with Shopify from the get-go.
Gotcha. Okay, so
Especially
you're using.
like lately, I've heard of like Etsy hacks, and that terrifies me.
Yeah, I was reading about that this morning. Okay, so you're on Shopify. One of the things that Etsy does, and I'm a bit of an advocate for people to start out on Etsy, is that Etsy has a market built in. They have an audience. They have customers, and so it's a lot easier to get those first sales through Etsy. So what is your plan when it comes to marketing and how to get those first sales?
In all honesty, Twitter has been really great to me so far. Like, again, I'm pretty lucky in that like I built up a decent following as just a toy enthusiast first, and then I was like, hey yo, I'm gonna start a shop, and a bunch of people just kind of jumped over and followed from there. So it's nice that I kind of have like built-in friends in the community. As far as getting my first sale, I'm just a big believer in like promoting on social media, and then really relying on the products to do their job, because you can rely on like algorithms and websites all you want, but at the end of the day, the most powerful advertisement you can possibly get is word of mouth.
Yeah.
And that's something that can really only be built up by people. So it's just kind of that trying to like interact with other people and put myself out there, and that's really what I'm doing for marketing.
Okay. I noticed Tame said hi. Tame on YouTube.
Hi, Tame.
And Tame has stolen another one of my questions. So I'll just go exactly by what Tame put here. What is your goal you wish to accomplish with your designs? And is there a niche that you're looking to fill, or fantasy you're wanting to bring to life?
So I'm a big sci-fi nerd. When I was younger, I used to decide whether or not to buy a book based on if there was a spaceship on the cover or not. And So, I'm definitely not the only person in this niche, but I would say I fall into the category of space shops with too much lore.
Okay.
um, yeah, I do creative writing as a hobby. So, when I was thinking of all these toy designs, I started thinking like, well, what alien creature would have these parts? And so that kind of evolved into just like an overall overarching story for what I'm making. And I guess if I had to elevator pitch the concept of my shop, it would be a xenobiology mission crewed by a bunch of hedonists.
Uh,
Um,
okay.
so everything is kind of like my rule of thumb for if I'm designing something is could this conceivably be part of an alien? Um, and that's kind of I guess my like niche in fantasy is everything's all aliens because I get really inspired by nature and like organic forms and
Hmm.
that's kind of what I enjoy sculpting the most. So you'll see a lot of like plant inspired stuff from me, um, but maybe not like a plant you find in your own garden.
Gotcha. So, what are you
um,
using for your 3D models?
I use a combination of Blender and Nomad. Um, I'm primarily a Blender person. That's really what I learned on, and I have Nomad on my phone for if I want to sculpt something on the go because I have one of those phones with a stylus. So it's super easy to sculpt stuff on the go. I've sculpted entire squishies on the airplane before in Nomad. So that's been really nice. In fact, this tentacle inspired plug was entirely in Nomad. Um, but I also, do a lot of stuff entirely in Blender. Um, I learned this like really neat trick with like using Bezier curves to map out the basic shape of something. And so I'm a lot faster in Blender than anything else.
Okay. Yeah. Blender is free. So, yay for that. I think Nomad is like $20 or something like that.
It's like I think I paid $15 for it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty cheap. If you can afford a dildo, you can afford Nomad.
Yeah. Um, so here you are getting ready to open your shop and you're looking back and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want to do this." What advice would you give them?
Oh man. Honestly, my advice to them would definitely be to like invest in the highest end production pipeline you can reasonably afford because it will actually save you money in the long run. Like probably my biggest regret when starting was I saw a lot of people who said I love the Ender 3 and I was like I'm going to buy an Ender 3 and I could have afforded something nicer than that, but I just kind of like I bought one because it was on sale. I was like, oh, it's cheap. And again, there are so many people who love their Ender 3s. Props to them. I'm 90% sure that I got a lemon because I have taken that thing apart multiple times, put it back together. I have switched out almost all the parts in it, and it still won't work.
Oh, wow.
So I just have like the ultimate lemon of Ender 3s.
So, did you keep the Creality Ender 3 or did you replace it?
I mean, I still have the Ender 3. It's in my garage. It's kind of been banished. Um, I actually replaced it with an Anycubic Viper, which I think you recommended to me in the Makers Discord. And that thing has just been fabulous. Like, it is definitely more expensive than the Ender, but it self levels, and it's after just a few minor tweaks in my slicer, it was just click and go. And so, yeah, my advice to anybody starting out is like don't try to save yourself money up front because you'll end up spending more in the long run trying to fix your cheaper things than if you just built or bought, the nicest thing that you can reasonably afford up front. And this goes for printers, this goes for vacuum chambers. There's a bit of an exception for vacuum chambers though, because like smooth-ons is like $700, and like okay, I would have to break like 5 of the cheap Amazon vacuum pump combos for it to be worth buying one of the smooth-on ones.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
maybe the exception, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, if you try to cut costs, oftentimes you wind up like selling yourself short when you're starting out, and that's really not something you want to do. So yeah, I guess like my advice can be summed up as spend money, your time is worth it.
Yeah. There's a lot there. And that's something that not only for when you're getting started, but going forward all the way through the life of your business. Just to give people or give folks a sense, the Viper, the Anycubic Viper is about $350 roughly, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then, so I have one of those. I also have a Prusa Mark III S Plus, which those are going to run you about $800 or so. And honestly, between the two, there's not a whole lot of difference. I think the Prusa slicer is better. And the thing is, I'm almost positive you can use the Prusa slicer with any printer.
I use the Prusa slicer with my Viper. It works fine. I found a profile online for the Viper that you can just download and then plug in the Prusa slicer. So that's what I use.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, because I guess that would be my other advice to people who are just getting into FDM printing. Is your slicer matters a lot. Like a lot of people, they'll go with the default slicer, or I'm trying to think of that one slicer that everybody uses.
Cura.
Yeah, Cura, that's the one. But the reality is that like there are a lot of slicers out there that are better than Cura. In terms of print time, you can plug in the exact same print into Cura and Prusa slicer, and it'll be so much faster in Prusa slicer. So that's my other advice. To people who are just starting out is to really know your equipment and do deep dives into it. Like read stuff about FDM printing for the sake of FDM printing, because like you might be like, oh my God, I'm so bored. I'm not a 3D printing hobbyist. This sucks. But in reality, like, your masters, are kind of the foundation of everything. You build your molds off of them. They're what turns into your final product. And so if you don't nail that first step of your process, there's no point in everything else.
Yeah. So are you using PLA, ABS, ASA? What filament are you using?
I use ABS. I researched post-processing PLA versus ABS, and it was a no-brainer. I was like, I would rather spend like 30 minutes and 2 busted prints up front figuring out how to make ABS work for me, rather than spend days and days and days sanding, because again, I'm really busy with my day job, and I wanted to pick something where I could post-process it as quickly as possible. Which is why I went with ABS, because I can just use acetone paper, and that takes 30 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
Just if anybody out there is looking into starting up a shop or 3D printing in general, if you print with ABS, you must have an enclosure. ABS fumes are toxic.
Yeah. ABS, not only is it toxic, but also it's very temperature sensitive.
It warps if it's, And
you get uneven cooling, and so parts of it will warp because, contraction, et cetera, it's science stuff. But one of the things that I've kind of become a proponent of is ASA, because it prints as easily and as nicely as PLA, but it also can be vapor smoothed with acetone. So it's kind of been my little poster child that I have been trying to support as much as possible. Warm Inside asking about ASA.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about ASA, and I looked into, I think, Polysmooth for a while, which is kind of like a name brand ASA filament.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing is honestly that ABS prints so well for me that I can't justify switching. I'm kind of at like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it stage
Absolutely.
with regards to 3D printing. So I really don't feel the need to switch or experiment. I print red Hatchbox ABS. That is the only filament I will ever print.
Yep.
It's like I found my filament and I'm sticking with it. It's my ride or die. And it's like, if I do upgrade, it'll be to a resin printer. Simply because I really want that high resolution. Because one of the things that does get to me about ABS and vapor smoothing is that you kind of inherently lose a little bit of detail.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, it's a little bit of a bummer when you spend 10 hours sculpting really fine details on your sculpt, only to print and post-process and be like, oh, I can barely see it. And I mean, silicone will still pick it up, but ultimately I'd really like to go to resin where things can be much more pronounced. And I know resin printing is its own can of worms and whatnot, but it's an excuse for my partner to get a sandblaster, so.
Yeah. Let's see. Dub Sativa, good to see you again. Been a little while, but asking about PVB filament. And while I haven't used it, it's one that I have researched. PVB can be smoothed with isopropyl alcohol, but I have not tried in it. I haven't done any experiments with it, but it is on my list of things to try out. Warm Inside, once again, inside my head. Prusa ASA, consistent quality, and my go-to. Prusa, their filament is, all of their filaments across the board are just so nice to print with. They are very consistent and very easy to use. So yeah, if it's not cheap, what you might spend $20 for a regular roll of PLA off Amazon. You're going to spend $30 for Prusament. But it's good stuff. So, Dub Sativa, yeah, in my head. All right, let's see. Other questions. Worm Inside says the Prusa is great because it'll be supported for years. Yeah, it will be. Let's see. Going back through methods. Dub Steve wanted to ask about your method of smoothing filament and what settings you use when printing.
Oh man, so my settings are not going to hold true for everybody because each brand, and even within the same brand, different colors print optimally at different settings. So you're gonna have to print yourself some test prints. Believe me, I have an armada of failed 3D benchies. To figure out what works best for you, but I can say in general, I print with a nozzle temp of 230, a bed temp I think is 110 for ABS. I don't remember off the top of my head because I just plug into my slicer, save the settings for forever and go. So it's been a bit since I've actually fiddled with them, but that's off the top of my head what I use. And then I print with a layer height of 0.12 and a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. And I find that 0.12 kind of gives me the optimal combination of print time to resolution.
Yeah. Yeah. There are things that you can play with in there as far as the layer heights, and you can get some really detailed prints out of an FDM printer. And it's going to take a little while once you start dropping that layer height down below, 1/10 of a millimeter. And that's one of the things about resin printers is that they generally print at 0.05 millimeters. So, half the layer height of even what we were just talking about. So it's a lot more layers.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and they also have a better XY resolution.
they do. My experience with resin is that it's expensive, it's messy, and you have to do a lot of testing of your resin against your silicone, because certain silicones or certain resins cause cure inhibition with the silicone.
Yeah, yeah, this is definitely why I didn't jump into resin printing off the bat, is that, FDM is a little easier to get into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but ultimately I'd like to be able to make masters that aren't disposable, because the reality of working with ABS and vapor smoothing masters, and I don't know if there's any data on, ASA or PVB masters, but I know just when you smooth a master, it causes the outside basically to melt together. And the result is that the outside and the inside kind of have like a different amount of tension on them. And this inevitably results in stress fractures. So, ABS masters are disposable. You just have to, come to terms with the fact that like your master is just going to explode one day. Which is kind of why I'd like to work with resin. And I mean, I could go the route of like having an ABS master and getting that to where I'm like perfectly happy and make a mold and cast a resin master in it. But again, part of it is due to the amount of detail that I like to sculpt. I would rather go with resin from the get-go. Just because I've seen people's resin prints and they've just been phenomenal in terms of the detail and texture, and that's like really what I'm aspiring to get out of my prints.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fueling my decision, is more the end result rather than the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't get married to the process. Is a piece of advice that I would give folks, is that you should be thinking about how your process can change and still get you the result that you need. Dub Sativa is asking, will printing in high quality instead of standard quality result in less post-processing in PLA?
Oh man, I only work with PLA for mold shells, so I am not the person to answer that. I kind of have like a general idea of how you post process PLA, and so my initial inclination would be like probably a little less post, but like you still have to sand your entire model. So yeah.
No matter what layer height you use with FDM, you're going to have to do some post processing. And even with resin, theoretically you might be able to just take one directly out of the printer and mold from it, but it's something that you just kind of have to do. You have to accept that it's part of the process, and you better learn to love it, because you're going to be doing it for a while.
That's why I want to get a sandblaster.
Okay, let's see. When that first sale comes in, what's that going to mean to you?
Oh man, that's gonna mean a lot. Oh man. I guess I can finally be like, I feel like I belong now. This is definitely like a lot of like imposter syndrome being on here. Is like, oh man, like Fantasy Grove and Dark Path have been on, and now like Shop Dad's gonna be on next week, and then there's like me. I'm just a baby.
Right. But so you've got that first sale coming in, and is that justification? What does that mean to you?
I guess it'll definitely make me feel a little more like legitimate. Like, oh, okay, I sold something to somebody who, doesn't know me IRL. I've done it. I've made it. Like that's But yeah, that's kind of what it'll mean for sure. Is I'll feel like
Yeah.
like it'll definitely make it feel like everything has been worth it, because starting up a shop is not easy. I've definitely cried in my workshop. Um, so it's very much an exercise in delayed gratification. So, yeah, no, when I have my first drop, immediately afterward, I'm gonna go probably get like Korean barbecue and boba and celebrate. Even if only 2 people buy anything, I'll be like, I don't care. I have product online now. I'm gonna celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain vindication to it that, you've done all this work and it wasn't a complete waste of time. And people are willing to give you money for the art that you're creating. Because I do consider it to be art. People can argue that, whatever. You'll never change my mind. You mentioned imposter syndrome. Is that something that you struggle with?
It's actually really funny. I've never really dealt with it much in my day job, even though like it's a big part of like discourse amongst graduate students. And so I'm just sitting here like, oh crap, I slept through all the lectures about how to deal with this. And so I'm sitting here, just like feeling like, oh my God, I'm such a fraud. Oh my God, I'm just making dildos in my guest room, and all of these big shops are they have their own like custom built workshops and fancy stainless steel sinks. And meanwhile, I just got mold release all over my guest bathroom, like that sort of thing. So it's kind of like, it's kind of hard, I guess, because like there's so many like really well established shops that it's kind of impossible to not compare yourself and your situation, your process to them. And it gets really hard sometimes to remind you that, everybody starts somewhere, and, probably multiple people started out pouring dildos in their guest room. So it's definitely an ongoing process dealing with the imposter syndrome. I'd like to be all like sunshine and rainbows and everything would be okay. But, sometimes the reality of making art, especially when you haven't sold anything, is that like putting something out into the world is risky and vulnerable, because you don't know how something is going to be received. And, I always come from the state of mind where art is a dialogue. You don't put art out into the world for it to go unnoticed, right? Ultimately you want to, reach someone. You want to make something, you want to make someone's life better with the things that you produce. So, it's definitely, right now, a lot of uncertainty, going in there like, oh my gosh, am I really going to be able to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So, how am I dealing with the imposter syndrome? TLDR, it's a process.
In the chat, we've got George, who has said, watching an artist or maker start to bloom is an amazing thing to see. Oh. And Bat follows up with, I wish to hold Cate's hands while you're doing amazing. I believe in you. It's so freaking awesome. And
everybody's been really sweet and supportive, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah. Now, Bat had another question, which was, do you have any inspirations or role models when you first started your shop?
Oh, man. There are definitely a lot of people that I look up to for different things. Like, I really admire like Tiberius in Fantasy Grow for his amazing, amazing hand painting. I really like Phoenix Flame Creations. I think that Rekka's sculpts are absolutely amazing. Oh gosh, I could just list like every shop and find something to admire about them, honestly. Like, I think Linda from Paladin Pleasure Sculptors comes up with really amazing pours. The things she does with super soft silicone just blow my mind. And then not even in terms of full-blown shops, but like sculptors like Frost and Venus, I definitely look up to their work when sculpting. So this is my way of saying like I really just look up to everyone and admire them, and I want to produce work that's on par with theirs. Like, my policy has always been, if I wouldn't put this on my nightstand next to the things I own, I shouldn't produce it. Which is maybe a very high standard to be holding myself to, considering that a lot of these people have been in the game for like 2, 3, I think in the case of Kudagudu, like 7 years. But, you know, the reality of entering a more saturated market is that consumers have a higher standard when shopping around. So in turn, I, as an artist, kind of hold myself to that high standard. And it's just kind of been really motivating, I guess, you know, to have a set goal. Like, this is where I want to be. This is who I want to be like.
Yeah.
I guess in a way it feels a little more attainable than like my day job when I'm looking at like professors and like VPs of R&D and I'm just going, how did you get
there? Tibbs says thank you, and says that you are one of us now.
I love
this community,
you all so much. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this community is so awesome. I mean, I don't know that I have ever worked with a community that has been so supportive of folks who are new to the category, etc. What's been your experience with the community?
In all honesty, like, I'm about to get real mushy gushy, and maybe also just a brief heads up, I'm gonna talk about mental illness for a second.
Okay.
So if that bothers anybody in the audience, maybe mute me for a bit. But in 2020, I had really, really awful depression. Like, I nearly checked myself into the hospital levels of awful. And this community actually brought me out of a really, really dark time. You know, when I felt like I had, you know, really like nothing else going for me, I met all these like wonderful, nice people. And like, sure, it started out as just talking about sex toys, but I got to know some people, you know, personally. And, you know, they became, you know, like internet friends. And in a time where I was feeling like really down and isolated, like these people kind of brought me back out of my shell. And, you know, like, because I was able to connect with all these people on the internet, I was actually able to like repair some of my IRL friendships and relationships too. So this is a community that's really given me a lot. It's brought me out of a dark place and uplifted me just with, you know, how kind and accepting and friendly everybody is. And so starting a shop has kind of really been my way of paying it forward to them. You know, I figure I have the resources and hopefully the abilities to make something. So, you know, I just, you know, I really want to give something back to all of these people who are, quite frankly, a large part of the reason I'm still alive. Sorry, that got real heavy.
Yeah, but it's also honest. And, you know, I think that, you know, that's part of what this is about, is letting people see behind the curtain a little bit and letting people get to know the makers and get to know, we're going to get into my philosophy here and why I started the whole live streams and everything. But, you know, that giving back to that community that has helped me so much by pulling the curtain back a little bit, letting them see kind of how the sausage is made, but also to understand what the makers are like themselves, who they are as a person, as opposed to that perception that you might have of them as somebody that you see on Twitter. And as vulnerable as you were, that was just such a great moment for people to be able to connect with you. So, I mean, I'm totally appreciative that you took that.
Yeah, I try to be really open about my struggles with mental illness because it's so stigmatized. I figure that, you know, the more open that I am about it, you know, maybe, you know, the bigger chance that somebody who's not brave enough to speak out and reach out just hears someone else talking about it and thinks they're not alone. So that's kind of my policy when you're talking about these things. Just like, I you know, I don't feel ashamed of it. And hopefully, you know, the more I talk about it, you know, the more maybe other people around me will feel like, you know, as cliche as this is, it's okay to not be okay.
Right. Now, I want to do a quick pivot and let folks know that if they have any questions, drop them in the chat. If you have any comments, then we'll go through all of those as well. And yeah, I'm going to check in with George here for a second and make sure that I have gotten to all the questions, because my list of questions has gotten all kinds of jumbled up now.
It always happens. I've got my emotional support boba over here.
What flavor?
Lavender. I am obsessed with like floral teas, like jasmine green tea. One of my favorite kinds of black tea is the lavender Earl Grey. So anytime I can get like a lavender boba or a rose boba, I'm all over that.
Okay. I love boba myself. I'm trying to remember where I had it first. I think I was in Seattle. Was it Seattle or LA? I can't remember which. But that first time I tried it, and you get those big tapioca and that huge straw, it freaked me out a little bit.
Oh yeah, see, I grew up with it. I grew up in the Bay Area, so there's boba everywhere over there.
Yeah, well, I'm here in the Midwest, so it takes us a little bit longer to get things.
I don't know. I managed to find boba in Italy last month, so it's everywhere now.
Oh. Let's see. Tibbs asking, what's your favorite pour style to do so far?
I really like doing spiral pours. Partly because they're really hard to mess up if you get yourself a split pour cup and electronic turntable. It's just kind of color by number. So that's definitely my favorite to do right now. I really want to learn how to do 3-color fades. I know in theory how to do a 2-color fade, and I can make those look not horrible, but I really, really like the look of like 3-color fades. So that's definitely something I want to work on. And, you know, I think a lot of, you know, non-dildo makers don't know this, but fades are actually really hard.
They are. I'll be honest, I still haven't figured them out. I tried for a while there, and then I was just like, nope, I'm going to make a left turn here and just do something else. So, do you have any favorite color combinations?
This is gonna come as a surprise because I think people online know me as that person who's obsessed with pastels, but I actually really like green and black, and also a recently discovered favorite of mine is like purple and brown, which sounds really weird. And hopefully it looks as good as it does. Like, I posted a picture on Twitter of the base of a toy that I just poured. And in my opinion, it looks really cool. It was like lavender latte inspired. So it's like a translucent lavender. Yeah. So it's like.
Oh, go ahead.
I guess I like kind of trying to like push the boundaries, and I really like also like interference micas and just putting them in everything. Because like for those who don't know, an interference mica looks white, but then at an angle it changes to a different color sort of. So if you see those toys that have like a red shimmer to them or a green shimmer, chances are it's because it's got an interference color in it. So it's really fun, kind of like being a little like alchemist, being like, oh, what sort of shiny can I make today?
Yeah. By the way, we have Venus in the chat.
Hey, hi Venus.
Yeah, I saw the post that you did today of, and it looks like coffee.
I was like, I want to go with like lavender latte.
Yeah.
So hopefully it looks really cool.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess this is Venus. Yeah, this is Venus asking, if this hasn't been answered, what's your favorite shop model that you've designed?
Oh man. Let's see. That's a really tough one. I actually don't have it. I don't have like a model on me to show right now because all of my masters are either broken, ripped, or sitting in molds or whatnot. But it is it's Nectoherba, so it's the one with the wavies going up the sides. I'm doing such a bad job at like explaining what it is, but I guess when I was kind of starting out, I was like, I want to have a little something for everybody, and I know people really like more like cylindrical, like horse-like things. But you know, I guess I kind of want to bring something like different and unique to everything I sculpt. So I was like, what if I make something that's more on the like planty, aquatic-y side of that? And so that's kind of how that came to be. I did a bunch of like art studies of leafy sea dragons, and
Okay.
I kind of incorporated some of the details from those studies into the base and the lower half. And then the top half of that toy was really just an experiment. I wanted to see if I could add like a wavy frill to a toy using like 3D modeling as opposed to just brute force sculpting it out. And I managed to, and it was a challenge, but I did it.
Uh-huh.
So I guess I'm just really proud of that one because I put a lot of work into that sculpt, and I really like the final product of it. And it's also quite fun to pour. It's a little challenging because it also, the horizontal profile of it isn't completely straight.
Hmm.
So, there's definitely some like consideration of like pour style and whatnot. But it's a fun one to like look at. And also after it's been poured, the little frills on the side are really fun to squish.
What about the amnicus?
Oh man, that one
Because
has a special place in my heart.
because it
Um,
looks it's almost like a mushroom.
yeah, it's kind of this like my original inspiration from it actually came from Lunar Kaleidoscope on Discord. Um, I was bored on Twitter one day and I was like, "Hey, somebody give me a sculpting prompt." It was really funny. At first, she was like, "Me? No, wait, actually, I meant not me, but I'll give you the prompt." And so her prompt was Poseidon. And so I sat down, I kind of drew up some aquatic things. And so that's kind of how I came up with the base. If I wanted it to look like a water splash.
Right.
Then the top part, I kind of went with this weird like fin slash gill like texture that kind of winds up making it look like a mushroom. So in the lore for that toy, I just kind of rolled with it. That's a nice thing. I definitely sculpt first and think of lore later.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at that and it reminded me of like a frilled mushroom, but the gills is also a very good comparison there for the amnicus. Tibbs talking about colors and I found my entire color taste broadened when pouring. You really learn to appreciate colors you wouldn't have looked at previously. Watch out though, it can make you expand your collection even more. How many
Oh man,
colors
my
do you have in
collection's
your
golden.
collection?
Um, of micas,
Yeah.
too many. I again, like I said, like the first. I think I was only just talking to you about this, but yeah, when I was first starting out, I was kind of just like trying to be thrifty, and so I bought a pack of huge like 50-gram jars from Eye Candy Pigments for like a really steep discount because they were all like unopened returns or things that like maybe a gram or two had been taken to make samples. So I was like, oh, I'll buy all this B product. Great. And so I wound up with just like this really random assortment. I have like some like UV oranges and pinks and like some like browns and like I have this one kind of large particle gold that I think is going to be relegated to squish only because it's too big to safely pour in dongs, but I want to see what it looks like in a squish.
Yeah.
Like I want to make a gold squishy.
George is
um,
asking how many colors that we have. And as far as like colors that, I have a substantial quantity of that it's probably about 60 or so. And then I have another probably 30 or 40 that I have sample size, like, 1 ounce bags of them or something like that. And just stuff that I can, you can make. 1 ounce has 30 grams in it. You can make pretty easily 15, 20 models out of that, or 15, 20 dongs.
yeah, I know. I have a bunch of 5-gram samples, and honestly, they go a really long way.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, experimenting with translucency and really lightly pigmenting with silicone. Like again, for those pours that I just did earlier today, I made with translucent lavender, and I basically just stuck a popsicle stick in the bag and pulled it out, and then stuck it in. Like that was all the mic I needed. Just whatever clung to the popsicle stick.
Yeah, there are certain colors like Silk Pig Red. You just kind of wave it in the general direction of your silicone.
Yeah. Silk Pig Red be like, oh, you're going to be pouring red out of this cup for the next week.
Yeah. Tame asking, have you attempted any inclusion pours yet? If you wanted to attempt them, what kind of inclusions would you have?
Oh man, so inclusions are super, super cool. I do not yet think I have the expertise to do them since there's such a high delam risk that I really don't want to be pushing myself to do something more advanced than I'm comfortable with. Sorry, I'm laughing at
I'm laughing at Tibbs too.
But inclusions are definitely once I get more comfortable with experimenting and maybe once I have the confidence to tackle near clear. I'm still definitely afraid of near clear. I've heard the horror stories about it not degassing well, and I'm just happy with my little normal EcoFlex over here. That's my comfort zone.
What about Sorta Clear? It's not
Sorta
as
Clear.
The thing is that I think Sorta Clear has a very long cure time. I think it's a 24-hour cure, but I can't remember.
It's also really firm, isn't it? Shore A, 20.
I'd have to look. Yeah.
Because I think Sorta Clear is what Kenton uses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody is okay with a firmer toy with inclusions, I could, in theory, venture into Sorta Clear. I feel like everybody really, really likes near clear, and I love near clear. I love the way multi-chrome pigments look in near clear. I have a lot of really cool ideas of what I want to do with multi-chromes because I think they're so pretty. That's my eyeshadow geek talking. I'm not wearing any makeup right now because I'm busy, but I'm one of those people where I'm just you know what? If I can get 5 colors out of one eyeshadow, I'm in heaven.
Yeah. Warm Inside is asking about, has anyone tried Slow Joe in near clear? I'm curious why you would want to, because you're looking at a 40-minute pot life and a 4-hour cure time. So be curious why you would want to. But I don't have any experience doing that.
Yeah, the only times I use Slow Joe is when I'm making a cavity pour mold, because then you want to give the silicone as much time to get all the air bubbles out. So yeah, Slow Joe is helpful if you're doing a cavity pour mold. That's what I use it for. A little bit goes such a long way though. I remember one time my shop goblin spilled the Slow Joe while pouring, and it must have been 4 or 5% Slow Joe by weight. And I was just well, it's already been poured, so I really don't want to waste 200 milliliters of silicone. It took a day and a half to cure.
Yeah, I think Slow Joe's at, I think 1% doubles your pot life and your cure time. So yeah, if you're at 4 or 5%, you might as well just set it aside for a week and come back.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. I was one step away from getting on my heat gun and be like, time to die.
Yeah, Tibbs says that you don't want to, or he doesn't, or Tibbs doesn't use it because he's impatient. Yeah. So last call for questions. I'm gonna do a quick moment here and remind everybody that I do have a Patreon. if you like what we do and you want to support us in some small way, then you can definitely drop into the Patreon, patreon.com/Amavidi, AMAVIDI. And, I think it starts at like $5 or something like that. And honestly, it's just an opportunity for folks to show us a little support. No expectation, no requirements, anything like that. I am trying to figure out one thing though, because I think one of the things I'd like to do for patrons is to do a patrons only video where we have like 5 questions that we ask each maker, and there would be like stupid questions like, I don't know, name 5 things that are gooey or something like that. But I think that could be fun. And I don't know if you have any ideas on what kind of questions we could ask the makers like that. Let me know. Send me a direct message on Twitter, and we'll go from there. So, Deb Sativa asking, have you tried hand painting yet?
That's another one that's kind of like advanced level dog making, like dog making 301. So I haven't tried that yet. In theory, I could. I have some cheap dollar store paintbrushes. I have some Thyvex, but I'd like to get it to the point where I have a really low flop rate with, easy pours before I get into stuff like hand painting and inclusions, just because I care about you guys and I want to sell my best work possible.
Yeah. Tibbs asking about your models and characters, and I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. When you're working on your models, do you have any lore that goes with them or characters?
I for sure do. I noticed that bit about character art. Hopefully sometime in my busy life, I'm going to find time to draw character art, because I do actually do 2D art sometimes when I'm not busy with other stuff. But when I was a high schooler, I actually used to sell artwork at anime conventions. So it'd be nice to kind of dust off that toolkit again. Hello, Paint Tool Sign, my old friend. Draw some character art. But for sure, I have like lore and characters, and that's another thing that I'm really excited to share, because I know lots of people on the internet love lore, and so I'm like, yes, give me the serotonin, like my stuff.
Okay, so question is delegation. How do you handle delegation? Because it sounds like you don't handle it very well.
I don't at all. I'm a one-man band. Like, I have a shop goblin, but he is very busy with a high-stress, long-hours job of his own. So my shop goblin is, he's mostly just printer wrangler and expert vapor smoother, and I handle everything else. Like Kenton, I wear many, many hats, except I'm not quite as good at balancing them all on my head as he is.
Okay. Bunny Rabbit over on YouTube asks, are there colors that you consider canon to the toy designs that you make, or do you prefer not to assign any colors to them?
I actually kind of like to leave it up to my imagination and just kind of make whatever I'm feeling in the moment. So I guess I don't really have any like canon colors. And that's kind of the advantage of not doing made to orders and really just only doing drops, is that I can just kind of make one-offs of whatever the heck I feel like. And you guys get what I feel like making, which fortunately for you is a wider variety of stuff than just pastels, actually. It's funny. I actually find darker colors more fun to pour than pastels, just because there's more contrast there. But
yeah,
I like collecting pastels.
Right. And that's my aesthetic, is that darker color, going into the dark purples and the greens and the reds. And the thing is that I would love to do pastels, but I just can't figure out. My brain just doesn't pastel. It just doesn't do that. So, Bunny Rabbit says, love your designs on Twitter, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Bunny Rabbit. You're so sweet. I love all of you. And do I ever sleep? Rarely.
All right. Well, George, have I missed any questions? Is there anything I need to get back to? Very last one in my list. And I tell you what, George, figure out a way to get it to me because I can't find it in my list. My list is so messed up at this point that I have no idea what I'm looking at. But I will remind everybody that we do this every Sunday at 7 o'clock Central Time. Next Sunday, we've got Shop Dad coming on. Yeah, Shop Dad is going to be on July 17th. We've got Silk Arts on July 24th. Chillo Fantasy on July 31st. And then when we get into August, we're going to be getting into the collectors. So we'll have folks who... one of them's in the chat. We've got Bat. Bat is going to be one of our guests as a collector. And these are folks that have hundreds of pieces. So, yeah. There's my question. Is your life today what you expected it to be when you started?
Man. I'm gonna go with no, but in a good way. When I started, I definitely expected that, I'd be doing drops by now. But, the reality is I'm not. I'm still kind of in the behind the scenes making stuff. And I'm at least in like the almost there stage of getting ready to drop. But, in a way, I'm kind of thankful that I took the time to work on things more slowly and not rush, because I think overall it's going to get, a better end result and a better product. So, yeah,
Good.
not quite what I imagined, but it's still fantastic.
Good. Venus asking, will you consider interviewing freelance designers sometime? Wink, wink. I have heard so many good things about Venus that I'm going to have to get in touch and we're going to have to figure out something. And I tell you what, send me a direct message on Twitter and we'll figure out from there what we need to do. What'd you say, George?
I was way ahead of you there.
Everybody's in my head tonight. So,
It's
all
a hive
right.
mind.
Well, Cate, was there anything else that you wanted to mention before we get out of here?
Oh man. Well, first of all, I just really want to say thanks to everybody who listened. It means so much to have all of you in the audience and asking questions in the chat. And shout out to all the lurkers out there. I'm actually pretty shy on the internet. Hence the emotional support boba. So shout out to the lurkers. I love you too. And yeah, that's basically it. I had a design I was going to preview, but I noticed we're almost running out of time, so I can save
go
that one
ahead.
for Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I do. I have the master. Ta-da!
Oh.
So this one is called Venator, and it is actually a combo like moth, dildo, and mini pen. And this one is slightly too large, which is why I haven't post-processed it. I'll try holding it up to the camera so you can see more of the detail. My Zoom background is being stupid.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to take kind of like a mishmash of the design language of everybody's favorite predator alien and biomechanical tattoos, and kind of come up with something, familiar, but, not a direct, replica of someone else's IP. No shade to anybody who is doing that. It's just not how I personally like to work. So yeah, everybody likes moths, everybody likes aliens with big chompers, and I really wanted to get into making something like a mini pen, and so I figured, why not make a dong with a mini pen on the end? So this is probably not going to be in my first drop, but in my second, just because it's going to require a little bit more fine tuning and R&D, especially with the mold. I'm dreading making the mold for this.
Gotcha. And define mini pen.
So a mini penetrable is for like FTM individuals, people with clitorises. So it is not meant to fit an average size penis. it's meant to fit smaller things. And
Gotcha.
I'm a cis woman. I still enjoy them. And I know a lot of FTM individuals really, really like them as well. And so this is kind of part of my mission to make things that cater to as many people as possible. That, I want to make stuff for everyone's stuff.
Yeah. Well, there is so much love in the chat tonight. Venus is over here. It was so awesome to hear from you. Best of luck to you for your business and whatever else you decide to pursue. And when you pulled out that master, there were oohs and ahs all around.
Oh, I'm so glad you guys like it. I was like, I don't have like a big drop announcement or big reveal or anything, but I at least wanted to have like some little present for all of you guys for tuning in. So that's your little sneaky peek.
Yay! All right. Well, Cate, thank you so much for joining me. And if you'll hang around for a few minutes here, we'll wrap things up. But I want to remind everybody, we do this every Sunday night at 7:00 Central Time, and we'll see you next week. And say goodbye, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Shop's going live.
All right. And with that, we are done. We've got Shop Dad coming in next week, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. Bye.